Steve Judd. My name is Sue Brain, and today Steve and I are going to be talking about the nodes, the nodal axis. And Steve, I just want to start with how did the nodes come into Western astrology? Because I know they were accepted in Vedic astrology, but they've also now playing an increasingly important role in Western astrology.
The North Node and South Node in Vedic astrology are known as Rahu and I forget the other one. And they've been around using Vedic stroke Indian astrology, Eastern astrology, but Indian astrology particularly comes from the Hindu for thousands of years. Helena P. Blavatsky, the founder of a Theosophical Society, on her journeys to India, she brought back the idea of the North Node into Western astrology in the 1890s, along with her compatriots MacGregor Matthews and Alan Leo, who is the founder of modern astrology in Britain. They were both theosophists. And they brought back with them not only the idea of the North Node, but also the meaning of the North Node as it was at that time, which was based around the Hindu translations around fate, karma, destiny, which sufficed for a long time in Western astrology until recent times. So before the Theosophical Society, the nodes didn't exist in Western astrology. So they've only been around in Western astrology for the last 130, 140 years.
A lot of people don't know that. They just think they're part of Western astrology, full stop, but they're not.
No, they're not. Now, you won't find any charts drawn up by astrologers pre-1880, 1885, 1890, which contain the North Nodes.
So why did she, Blavatsky, I can never say a word, her name, why did she bring them back then? Why did she and Alan Leo introduce them into Western astrology?
You know what, Sue? Once I actually sat down for 3 months and read Isis Unveiled from cover to cover. And if you're familiar with it, it's that thick, very fine print. But there is a lot of good astrology in there. But, oh, God, that was a labor of love. I'm never doing that again. I think that what happened is that on her journeys to India, she got caught up in the crossover between the philosophy and the theology of the times in that place at that time. And the astrology of the Hindus at that time, the Vedic astrology, she just got caught up in it and she thought, well, let's bring it back. I mean, I don't know this, but I'm presuming that's what it was.
And she got caught up in the whole concept of fate and destiny.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. She was very connected with what she considered to be the angelic realms.
Yeah.
I mean, she wrote Isis Unveiled in a couple of weeks in a room on her own. No, just people putting food under the door for her and her putting her notes back out. She was channeled.
Incredible woman.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
But strange, nevertheless. Anyway, so yeah, that's where they come from as far as Western astrology goes. So it's a recent innovation.
So why do you feel that they're now playing such a central role in so many people's readings then?
Well, bearing in mind that it's only in the sort of 1800s, mid-1800s, that the majority of people started to even think about coming out of the fields and starting to find other forms of work. It's only as we got into the Industrial Revolution of the mid-1800s that people started working in factories and the development of the middle classes. And with these innovations at that time, people had more spare time.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about
I think it was
philosophy.
more choice as well.
Yes, there was less. It was less routine. So there was more scope to expand one's ideas. This was synchronous with the development, with the discovery of Neptune around that time. Because when Neptune was discovered, we got the first organized alcohol brewing, we got the first mesmerism and hypnotism, the first cameras and celluloid, the first oil production, all Neptunian things, but also the first development of a more not organized but accepted form of spirituality.
Mm.
And the nodes, and from this came these ideas of there being more to life than just the priest saying you will go to heaven or go to hell.
I read something really interesting the other day about the impact of the bicycle, and that when people are starting to be able to go further afield, literally further afield, that changed choices as well. It changed the choice of the person they married, for example.
Yes.
Rather than marrying in the village, they married somebody maybe 30 miles away. And that, and you don't realize the impact that of something as simple as the bicycle could have on the culture and the choice.
Little steps, little things develop into big things. Yeah, I know.
So here we are with the nodes firmly established now into Western astrology. But before we start about looking at that, can you explain astronomically how they manifest?
Look, it's complicated, but once you got it, it's simple. We know that from a geocentric, from an Earth-based perspective, it appears to us that the sun makes a yearly journey through the 12 signs of the zodiac on a pathway that we call the ecliptic, the path of the sun through the sky. We know that the moon has 3 separate motions. It goes round the sky, but it goes up and down and in and out.
That's why we got the sizes of moons.
Exactly. And the moon, as it goes round the sky, its orbit, which is sometimes going like that, and sometimes going like that, and sometimes going like that, because of its motion up and down, its orbital path will intersect with the ecliptic, the sun's orbital path. And where those 2 orbits the sun's path was like that, the moon's path will be like that, and where those 2 lines connect will change each lunar cycle. Each month, those 2 lines will change by about 1.5 degrees and move further on. And over a course of a long time, about 18¾ years, is the time it takes those points to go all the way around the sun's orbit. And that's where the node is, where the sun's orbit and the moon's orbit interact at any given time.
Would you call them energy points? Would that be a good way to describe them, or is that not quite accurate?
No, I think in Western terminology, the word is the word we already use. It is a nodal point. Because a nodal point suggests it's a confluence of energies. It's where it's a node. It's like every energy is condensed into one point. So it's where you've got a lot of one of my favorite analogies of this is it's like being on the inside of a pencil sharpener. Getting to the end, to that point.
That's the absolute.
Yes. And then when you get through that point, boom, you expand.
Yes. Things sharpen up. Yes, I love it. I love it. Okie doke. So I know you're really interested in the whole concept of the relationship between the nodes and the eclipses. Do you want, before we start talking to the actual meaning of the nodes?
This is the astronomy of the nodes. The sun and the moon will land in the same degree as each other every 29.5 to 29.75 days. This is the new moon. And every 29.5 to 29.75 days, there will be a full moon as well. This is because the sun and the moon share the same degree of longitude. If you take a line from the North Star, which we can see in the Northern Hemisphere, down to the Southern Cross, which you can see in the Southern Hemisphere, you can split the sky into 12 segments, 12 bananas, which are like the signs of the zodiac, or 360 segments, which are the individual degrees of the zodiac. So when you see the sun moving along and then the moon comes along and just goes boom, sun and moon in the same line of degree, that is a new moon. But that's when they're in the same degree of longitude. But when they're also not only in the same degree of longitude, but also in the same degree of latitude, that's when you get eclipses. And if the moon is close to the Earth on a new moon, because the moon goes like that, when the moon is close to the Earth, it completely obscures the sun. So we get a total eclipse. When the moon is further away from the Earth and it's a new moon, you get it doesn't obscure the sun completely, so you get the ring of fire.
Yeah.
Full moon, you get the moon being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. And the full moon and new moon can only happen, the eclipse of the sun and the eclipse of the moon can only happen when the sun and or the moon is on the north node. When you look at a horoscope and you think, okay, so this person's born on a new moon, but the node is right over there, it's not an eclipse.
But
if full moon and the north node is within 5 degrees of the new moon or full moon, they're going to be born on pretty much a total eclipse.
So I'm actually born on a full moon eclipse, bang on.
Right.
So what would you say is the sort of psychological or energetic impact for people like me?
There's a big difference between people being born on an eclipse of the full moon and people being born on the eclipse of the sun, because the moon does get eclipsed by the Earth. To a total eclipse of the moon is not uncommon. You know, you can easily get 2 of them a year. On average, you get about 15 every 10 years. So it's not uncommon. Whereas total eclipses of the sun are uncommon. When you get the eclipse of the moon, it's a classic full moon thing, as in it's an ending, but people born on an eclipse of the moon, I tend to feel that they're here to complete certain things, that they're at the end of a long pathway. Not that I believe in reincarnation, but if I did, I would say they're at the end of a long pathway, which is now they're going to wrap things up.
That's interesting, yes.
Whereas if you're born on a total eclipse of the sun, which is a new moon, this is throughout history, people have been very scared of an eclipse of the sun. And to this day,
because the world goes black.
The world goes black.
Yeah.
To this day, there's certain things you don't do. You don't get married on an eclipse of the sun. You don't start a new business on that day. You don't launch anything within 24 hours of a total eclipse of the sun. And it's not rocket science, it's common sense. Because when you see a total eclipse of the sun, you see all the birds land, all the animals huddled together. Humans bang drums and light fires. You know, you don't start something new. You protect yourself. So yeah, but then eclipses have always been a bit of a scary thing because the light disappears from our lives. And without that light, heat and life dies.
And we're out of control. We have no control over what happens. That's the thing. And I think it reminds us there is something far bigger than us at play in the universe and actually impacting how we relate to the world.
Well, that's a terrifying thing about astrology. You cannot stop the planets in their pathways, in their movements. I remember when Pluto, I mean, in the 80s, I was looking at my ephemeris thinking, oh, in 30 years' time, Pluto's going to pass opposite my sun. And then it was like 20 years' time, then 10 years' time, then 2 years' time. I'm like, and then it happened. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. This is terrifying. And now looking back, it was so self-empowering and psychologically affirming and best thing that ever happened to me. Hurt like hell, but it was worth it. But this is human nature. As astrologers, we get scared by, oh, this is coming, that's going to happen. But it could be wonderful.
Well, so, transformation that happens. That's what I look at it whenever especially the outer planets are connecting with a personal planet. There is some form of powerful transformation going on. It's how
There
we
will be cause and effect. There will be an event.
There will be an event. So is there anything else you want to say about the impact of a full moon eclipse or a full sun eclipse? Anything you want to say to somebody who's, we talked a little bit more about the moon, but
this is where astrology can never be absolute. Because when you start, from the Hindu translation of the North Nodes, it's all about karma. And from karma, we get words like fate and destiny. But at the same time, when you look at a birth chart, if you see someone who's born with everything on the left-hand side of the chart, they're much more in tune with words like free will, choice, and self-determination. Whereas people born with 80% of planets on the right-hand side of the chart are going to be much more in tune with words like fate and destiny and predetermination. Now, I'm on the inside looking out. I have everything on the left. I cannot be objective about this. But to me, the idea of everything is cast in stone and we're just following a predetermined path is anathema to me. I can't do that because I like free will. So to me, the North Node is not... When Blavatsky brought the North Node back, she brought back this idea of karma and reincarnation, but it came from a culture where for thousands of years, wealth and prestige was in the hands of 1% of the people, and the other 99% had their loincloth and their begging bowl. And all they could do was hope that if they suffered enough in this lifetime, they'd have a better life next time. That was their philosophy. And that's how the North Node came into Western society, with this idea of, if you do well in this life, you get a better life next time. And the position of the North Node shows where you've got to struggle. I dispute that. I still think that the North Node position, particularly by house and to a lesser extent by sign, definitely shows the most difficult thing for you to do in life, but the thing that the soul most needs to do. Whereas the South Node in the horoscope shows what you're naturally skilled and talented at, but it's easy. You don't have to struggle. But I dispute the idea of fate, karma, destiny. I much prefer the idea of the North Node suggesting words like mission statement, purpose, and particularly the reason why one volunteered to come to planet Earth in the first place, a conscious choice from a soul level.
Looking at it as the soul's growth. I think that's important. I mean, the other way, sometimes I think about the South Node, which is the place where we're most comfortable because that's where the skills are, but it's actually about growing beyond that. And I often think that maybe it's about, perhaps it's a predisposition that we carry through. It doesn't have to be, I mean, personally, I do believe in reincarnation, so I'm more sold into that, but I'm really hear what you're saying, that doesn't work for you.
I need to clarify this. I'm okay with the idea of homeopathic reincarnation, where droplets of this life and droplets of that life. But linear reincarnation doesn't work for me because there's more people alive on planet now than there has been in the whole of history put together. So that kind of knocks linear reincarnation on the head, unless there's just billions of new souls cramming in because the Earth is approaching some type of incredibly large transition point of consciousness, which so many souls want to get in and experience as part of their own pathway. That's feasible.
That's very yes, yeah, that's very feasible. Which
so it seems to me that as we take on these new concepts, as we individually expand our ideas and our consciousness, so we are both not only doing ourselves big favors for the future, but also contributing and adding to the store of consciousness expansion and knowledge that the Earth needs to make that evolutionary leap.
And that's soul, that's group soul stuff. Taking
yes.
Our soul needs to grow the most.
Yeah, but I have a Mars-Uranus conjunction in my 11th house. So I'm not going to do group soul stuff or community. If I do, I'll be the enfant terrible. I'm the one who likes provoking things. What's that red button? What happens if I push it? Boom.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not so much these days, but
So coming from your perspective, what's the most important thing that you'd like to say to people working with the nodal axis? You can't separate one from the other, obviously,
Oh
because
no, there's one thing I always say to them: be true to yourself. Live life according to your own truths, your own beliefs, your own philosophies. Walk your own talk. Have a clean conscience. Because if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said.
yeah.
Simple. And the idea of being simple, not simple as in stupid, simple as in not complicated. That to me is the essence of the nodes.
Yes, it's interesting. But I do think they carry a theme, and that theme could be the sign that they're in, certainly the house that they're in. I've noticed that a lot.
If I can only be about it, I can only quote from my own experience. My North Node is in Sagittarius, and the idea of commitment with Sagittarius to family and home has always been a big one for me. Whereas my South Node is in Gemini in the 10th house of career, and I speak for a living, and I've just got this. I can talk in public, so it's easy for me to do the South Node, to find my own home, to find home and commit myself to it. Not home so much in the outside world, but home inside here.
Yes.
For my soul to identify with comfort in myself and find my own home in my soul. That's a lifetime of challenge.
Yeah, and that's the theme of your challenge, of your soul's challenge, would you say? Would you?
Yes. Yes. To be true to oneself, about oneself.
Yeah. My North Node is in third house Aquarius, and obviously the South Node is in Leo in the 9th, and my whole life has just been about learning.
Yes, and ultimately communicating that into the larger community.
Absolutely.
Which is what we're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you realize the theme of it, that really is helpful, rather than getting hung up, as you say, about, oh, this is my destiny or whatever, but just honoring the theme of it.
Indeed. And I'm aware that we're running tight on time, but there's one other thought, there's one other thing here that's just occurred to me as we're speaking. Bearing in mind the nodal correspondences with eclipses, when the light of the moon or the light of the sun blinks out, and yet here am I saying that the North Node and the South Node encourage us to live our own truth, to walk our own talk. Perhaps really it's about us finding our own light within and shining like the sun and the moon from within ourselves. And that's how the node can be at the most positively manifested.
Absolutely lovely stuff. Yeah, that's just, I love the fact if you're born on a full moon eclipse, it's more likely that you come here to finish things off or just to tidy things up. And a new moon eclipse, maybe you've come in as a really new experience of something.
Yeah, an initiator, a starter, a catalyst, or just someone who's beginning a whole new cycle.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, Steve, before we wrap this up? I found this absolutely fascinating. Anything you'd like to say? I'm just going through my list here.
Just that unlike all the other planets, the North Node is only a mathematically worked out point. It is not a body in space. You cannot look up into the sky and see it. So it is more of a concept within ourselves rather than something we can directly relate to as a body in space.
Yeah.
So basically, the node is saying, find your own truth within yourself and live it.
I just feel it calls us. It's this sort of feeling of being called out.
It's also where the sun and the moon join. It's unity, to find unity within ourselves.
Wow, lots to think of here, isn't there? I love that. Okie dokie. So we're drawing this particular video to an end, and we'll be seeing everyone again soon.
We will soon.
Soon. Don't know what we're going to be talking about, but we were talking about something. All right then. So Steve, thanks so much. I've loved that, and see everyone else when we do.